Ko te mihi tuatahi ki te atua, ko ea te timatanga me te whakamutunga o ngā mea katoa, me whakakororea tōna ingoa I ngā wā katoa. Tuarua kia koutou, kia ora koutou. Ko waiau e tuaki nei, ko hoka nui te mauka, mataura te awa, takitimu te waka, kaitahu te iwi, ko Lyndon McIntosh ahau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora, I'm Lyndon. The Treaty of Waitangi is something that has been an area of interest for me, and I was blessed to do some university study on it a few years ago. I come to this topic as a person with both Maori and Pākehā ancestry, who grew up here in Christchurch in a white bubble, having very little contact with the Maori world, te ao Maori. Sometimes I say my tribe is Ngāti Ginger. So what is the Treaty of Waitangi? It is an agreement to guide the relationship between the Indigenous population of New Zealand and everyone else. This was signed between some chiefs representing some of the Indigenous Maori people and representatives of the Queen of England on the 6th of February 1840 at Waitangi in the Bay of Islands at the top of New Zealand. Afterwards, several copies travelled around the country and were signed by over 500 Maori chiefs. Hopefully, most New Zealanders already know that. Okay, I see a few nodding heads. What I'm about to share with you, unfortunately, very few people know. I believe that the treaty is a taonga, a treasure. It provides the legal right for us people with non-Maori ancestry to be in New Zealand. Under the treaty, the New Zealand government has the right to invite people to come to settle in New Zealand. Therefore, New Zealanders can be classified as either tangata whenua, people of the land, or tangata tiriti, people of the treaty. Whichever you are, this document guarantees your right to live in New Zealand and outlines some rights you have. The treaty can also be a bridge spanning between Maori and Pākehā and keeping us together, keeping us connected. This agreement came about largely because of Britain's desire to colonise New Zealand before another nation did. Concerns around the way that colonisation had occurred in other British colonies, and also concerns at the way many settlers were behaving in New Zealand. A precursor to the treaty was the Declaration of Independence. Can we have a show of hands? Who's heard of the Declaration of Independence? Ka pai. He whakapūtanga o te rangatiratanga o New Tireni. So this is it, and you can get a copy of that at the back. Kia ora, Network Waitangi. It was signed by some chiefs in 1835, so 5 years before the treaty. And a really big driving force behind the treaty was the Clapham sect, which was a group of Christians in London that included William Wilberforce, who was a leader of the movement to abolish slavery. Maori were very quick to embrace Christianity in New Zealand. From the seeds of the 1766 pre-European prophecy of Toiroa, talking of the god called the Son Who Was Killed, and also Maori inviting Samuel Marsden to preach the gospel in 1814, the church grew rapidly. The 10 years between 1835 and 1845 were nothing short of a revival. Hallelujah. In 1845, there were 64,000 Maori in church out of an estimated population of 110,000. Over half of Maori were exploring Christianity. Maori were sharing the gospel with each other. Sadly, with the increasing lust for land and associated un-Christ-like conduct, including from many missionaries, but not all missionaries, most Maori grew to distrust most of the missionaries and the church. It's for those reasons that I think the church really needs to support the treaty and do its best to support its principles now. So what does the treaty say? Well, there is a Maori version, Te Tiriti, and an English version, the treaty. So on this side, ane Te Tiriti. Okay, this is the Treaty of Waitangi, the Maori version, and a translation in English. And flip it over, and you've got the English version, the Treaty of Waitangi. And there's a kōrero here. This talks about some of the differences and some of the problems, which are often debated. I'm sure you've heard of some of those. And this is not surprising. It's not surprising that there are differences because Maori, firstly, was only an oral language. There was no writing. Many of the concepts in the treaty were foreign concepts and very hard to translate. And it was also translated in the middle of the night. Henry Williams and his son Edward stayed up all night the night before it was signed. So it was a bit of a rush job, to be honest. So that explains a few of the problems. The Waitangi Tribunal speaks of the commonalities between the two versions as the principles of the treaty. And there are the 3 Ps. The first P is partnership, the second P is protection, and the third P is participation. I'll try and give you a bit more detail about what it says. So, in Te Tiriti, you'll see, unlike most legal documents that I've ever seen, it's pretty short. There's an introduction and then 3 written articles. And Article 4 was a spoken one, wasn't written down. The articles can be remembered by the mnemonic CROW, K-R-O or K-R-O-W with the 4th article. So the first article is all about kāwanatanga or governance. And that's giving the Queen the right to rule over Pākehā land. The second is about Māori retaining rangatiratanga, specifically tino rangatiratanga, which is absolute authority over their land and their precious things, their taonga. This article also opens the way for land sales from Māori to Pākehā. The third article is about ōritetanga, equal treatment. The Queen promised to give Māori people the same rights as the people of England. And finally, the 4th article is about whakapono, which is freedom of religion. After Te Tiriti, as you probably know, things did not go well. One analogy I like to use is of flatmates. Hands up if you've had a bad flatmate. Yeah. The Pākehā family moved into the Māori family's flat, and bit by bit, the Māori found themselves living in a smaller and smaller area until they pretty much just had to stay in one small bedroom. They were also told they couldn't speak their language in the flat, and all of the flat rules were made by the Pākehā family. That's pretty much how it went. By 1877, Pākehā had well and truly taken over, and the Chief Justice of the time called the treaty a simple nullity. Land was confiscated or bought for a tiny fraction of its worth. And to give you one local example, just look at Kemp's deed, aka the Canterbury Purchase. Hands up if you've heard of that. I'm a teacher, so I'm doing a hands up, you know. I try not to speak to you like 5-year-olds. A few of you have heard of it. Up until a few years ago, just a couple of years ago probably, 3-4 years ago, I hadn't heard of it. It's pretty big. In 1848, a huge chunk of the South Island, from above Christchurch all the way down to Dunedin, was bought for £2,000. Surely that was a lot of money back then, though. £2,000. In today's money, that's no more than $300,000. You can't even buy a house for that. What a rip-off! What a scam! Yeah, so that's some of the heritage of the dodgy deals, and there were thousands, hundreds and thousands of those deals all over the country. Land is sacred to Māori, and it should not be surprising that there is a lot of hurt around this, a lot of mamae around this land loss and the subsequent poverty that has affected many Māori in Aotearoa. There is also pain around the suppression of Māori language and culture that occurred as a result of many racist and discriminatory laws that were made over a period of about 150 years. So, what are the implications for us today? In Christchurch, Ngāi Tahu are mana whenua. They have special rights guaranteed under Te Tiriti to the land and its resources. They have a legal and moral right to be involved in decisions affecting these. Some action steps for us, possible action steps. Firstly, read Te Tiriti. So this is our nation's important founding document and something that we should be proud of. And it's for all New Zealanders, and there are copies on the table at the back. Secondly, read Huia Come Home. This is an amazing book, and it gives an insight into New Zealand history from a Christian perspective. It's available as an audiobook, or if you want, you can just, if you want a freebie, you can just listen to a lot of talks from Jay Ruka, the author, online. So it's all on YouTube there. Thirdly, try to speak some Te Reo Māori. Te Reo Māori is a treasure for all New Zealanders. It is a beautiful and thankfully not too difficult language, and no one else will save it from dying out. There is a real, there's been a bit of a revival of Te Reo, the language, in the last few years, but even now, it's still in danger of dying out. It may not be around in 100 years' time. The respect starts with an effort to make correct pronunciation of Maori words. So no one's gonna get angry if you're doing your best, if you're trying, okay? It's just giving it a go. Your a, e, I, o, u. On that subject, if you want to practice any Maori, kōrero Māori mai, feel free to try it out on me. Even if it's just kia ora, that's a great start. So I challenge you, try and say kia ora to as many people as you can. Finally, pray for Aotearoa. As the late Maori Bishop Verco said, you are stuck with us and we are stuck with you. I believe that God has been at work reconciling tangata whenua, Maori, and tangata tiriti, everyone else, in New Zealand. And more people are seeing the beauty in our nation's Maori culture that belongs to us all. I'm excited for the future. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.